Good
morning.
to see everyone. Why don't we wait one more minute and then we'll get formally started. If that's okay. Why don't we go ahead then and call the meeting to order. Good morning and welcome to everyone. It's good to see everyone. Happy New Year. Appreciate everybody being available. I want to thank everyone for the helpful emails and conversations I've had since our December meeting. And we're going to talk about those a little later today. I will should confirm we have a quorum, and I can see that by my head count. I hope everyone got yesterday Jasmine's email with 4 attachments: the agenda for today's meeting, a draft of the minutes of our first meeting in December, a copy of the county executive's November 24, 2020 executive order creating this commission, and a document entitled the draft procurement chronology. And that is something we'll discuss in item number 4. There is some overlap between and among those documents and the subjects of procurement generally, as we all know. And we'll be looking at each of those items in a bit. Apropos of today's presentation by Rob O'Connor and his team about information technology, I have 2 technology items for my fellow commissioners. One, the email that Jasmine kindly sent yesterday with the 4 documents I've just mentioned as attachments. That was done at your chair's express request. But we're all going to need to use SharePoint going forward. So I'll endeavor on Jasmine's kindness in future meetings, but we do really need to get used to using SharePoint. And if anybody has any technical problems with that, please contact Jasmine. And I hope people took advantage of the opportunity to test video and sound before getting on this morning. I'm hoping we can avoid the challenges of the first meeting going forward. But if during the conversation today you have any technology issues, please turn off your video. That seems to solve a number of problems. And the good news is we have Rob right here if something should occur. That is the extent of the welcome, heartfelt but short. So let's move to item number 2 on the agenda, commission updates. The first thing is approval of the December meeting minutes. The minutes have been distributed to everyone, and I'll ask, are there any corrections? Yes, Peter.
Minor, on the last page, in the first paragraph, way down, Ms. Butler stated that works. I believe she is a word that's missing right there.
Okay. Yes, I see that. Okay. Thank you. Any other corrections? Okay, I would ask that that correction be entered on the master copy of the minutes, if you will. And if there are no further corrections offered, then the minutes as corrected are approved. Thank you. During and after our last meeting, there have been some questions that were submitted, and also questions asked, of course, during the meeting regarding the purchasing presentation. And a number of commissioners, Peter, Dan, Scott, asked for information and data. Elizabeth, could you update the commission on those information and data requests, please?
Well, in general, please continue to pose questions both during the commission meetings and in between, as I know Dan and PETA have done. We are trying to keep a running list and try to answer some of the questions as appropriate with the meeting topics, and that'll be clearer later in the meeting when we go through how future meetings will be structured. When it comes to data, the good news is that other part of my life with the county is BC Stat and our team of data analysts. We also work closely with Rob O'Connor and the IT team. So when the data requests come in, they are being funneled to our BC Stat team. They're reaching out to the relevant departments. I think initially it was mostly around MBE, WBE, but there's a bit of a process to get the data, analyze it, and then present it back to the committee. So I don't want you to think the fact that you haven't seen anything means we're not working on it. I know that for a future discussion of the disparity study that's underway, as well as the specific questions Scott asked, we will be presenting all of those data points around MBE, WBE. I don't recall other data requests yet, but that will be the process for anything. And I welcome additional requests about specific, we call it data, but it's really sort of historical information about how the county has processed contracts, who vendors are, et cetera. So please pose the questions and we will feed back the information as quickly as we can within the right commission topic area. I know Jasmine kept a catalog of some of the other questions that came in the last month or two. I think we were going to share a document on those.
Yeah, I can share that document. Hold on. I'll also send it through. I'll put it on SharePoint after this meeting. So
Here we go.
just a moment.
While we're waiting, I do want to share with the commission, after last meeting, I did take the liberty of tentatively booking some in-person meeting room for the spring. That's wishful thinking, but someday we will meet in person, and I wanted to get the best room that I could with parking. So, we won't be doing this virtual forever, I hope, and I'm prepared.
Here, here.
For those on the county side, I booked the Ag Center. So, fingers
Good.
crossed.
It's a good size structure.
We can open the doors and there's a lot of parking, so let's hope. I'm April or May. Okay, here we go. Got the agenda, I think. There we go.
So PETA and Dan have been emailing questions and I've been tracking them here and starting to pull some of the answers. I also have Dan's, I think there are a lot of them about the particular code. And then we had the requests from the last December meeting that Elizabeth alluded to, the data ones that were already in process. So I'll put this on SharePoint after this meeting, so that way, if there's any other questions, especially pertaining to the first presentation that you feel are still not captured, if you all could put those in, and I will compile all these and get answers to everyone, hopefully, by end of next week.
Or suggest when we're going to discuss them. I think that'll be clearer as we get to the end of this meeting and talk about the chronology and how future meetings will be structured.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, thank you, Elizabeth and Jasmine. That is certainly what we'll talk about when we get to item number 4, because we've got a lot to get our arms around, and we need to sort out what the commission should be focusing on, given our mission and just as importantly our timeline. So we'll hold that for the 4th item. But unless anybody has any questions or thoughts about item number 2 on the agenda, I propose to move to item number 3, and that's today's presentation by Rob O'Connor, the director of the County Office of Information Technology, and his team. one of the aspects of the fourth agenda item, which is, again, sorting out what do we need to look at when, and who do we need to hear from. IT might seem a little early at this juncture, but as we noted earlier, there is a lot of overlap in procurement. Technology is becoming more and more and more important and has a role in just about everything. And there are two aspects that I think it's very helpful for us at this juncture to hear from Rob and his team about. And that is one, how IT does procurement in Baltimore County. And also IT is presently in a system build out. And that presents an opportunity, as I understand it, for the commission perhaps to weigh in and to consider how that new system might impact county procurement. So it is, given the role technology plays, and I am sure this will not be the last time we'll ask Rob to talk to us, it seemed to make sense to take advantage of his and his team being available today so we can get this overview, hear about how IT does procurement, and hear about the current system build out. So with that, and thanks in advance to Rob and his team, I'll turn it over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Phil. A little bit of clarification. So today we are going to talk about IT and how we handle procurement in the county. And I believe we have scheduled for next month's meeting, February, for OIT, Office of Budget, Finance, and HR, to discuss the new Workday implementation. So those will be two separate agenda items. So good morning, everyone. As Phil alluded to, yes, IT has touch points in every single agency throughout the county. We are involved in purchases and implementations of anything from equipment at landfills, vehicles, to edge devices, obviously applications and data security. So this morning I have asked three of the many rock stars that I feel we have on our OIT team to assist in this presentation. You will hear this morning from our Deputy Director, Pam Platt, OIT Financial Manager, Dana Walker, and our Contract Specialist, Christina Lewis, who you may hear me finally call Clue, as that is her nickname. So if you hear Clue, that is Christina Lewis. So it's very hard not to do that. So that may slip out a few times.
Rob, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I apologize.
Yeah,
I cannot share.
Oh, you can't share?
It is not allowing me. So Jasmine.
Jasmine, can you share the slide deck?
Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I figured we're waiting so people could stare at me. And everyone, that's Pam, my Deputy Director. So I'll keep going, Jasmine. You let me know if you have any problems, okay? So Pam and I, as many like to joke around here, kind of started when this county was seeded. We've been in IT, this department, for over 20 years. Pam was added to the team to assess and fix kind of a broken and distributed service delivery model that we had about 20 years ago. It was distributed across many agencies with very little centralized services, similar to kind of how a lot of other jurisdictions, especially smaller jurisdictions, still operate today. This distribution created IT inequities across the agencies, ranging from equipment, funding, and resourcing. In 2008, the county administration, in full support of the Office of Information Technology, mandated a centralized IT structure. It was this initiative that today has led to a fully equitable distribution of funding and services for every agency and the enterprise as a whole. Today, we operate a secure, efficient, and industry standard IT ecosystem. There are 3,000 plus other jurisdictions around this country with the same challenges and same service expectations. We often look to these other jurisdictions for successful technology implementations and solutions. However, sometimes we are a bit different in our needs and can be, like, as I like to call it, a unicorn. This is where having vendors who range from large enterprise to small specialized enable Baltimore County to be agile. You will now hear how centralization of services, processes, project management, and IT contracting and purchasing makes for a better Baltimore County. I'd like to turn it over to Pam Platt.
Good morning. Thank you, Jasmine. I guess it's not allowing you to put it into presentation mode. So we'll just let you know when to go to the next slide. So I appreciate your help. So you can go to the next slide. Baltimore County OIT is a fully centralized IT department providing standard services to all county agencies, including the Baltimore County Public Library. OIT assists with the solicitation, review, and selection of all technology vendors. This has eliminated calls from vendors directly to agencies attempting to circumvent purchasing procedures and IT standards while over-promising and under-delivering. The IT consolidation has increased interoperability between agencies through technology, increased efficiencies and services delivered to our customers, as well as strengthen our cybersecurity posture across the enterprise. Vendors are selected based on their ability to fit within the Baltimore County IT ecosystem instead of adjusting our ecosystem for products selected by various agencies. With this IT consolidation of all agencies, OIT matured and adjusted practices to handle roughly 25 agencies, all with their own lines of business. A need was identified for an IT professional with a business understanding. CRMs were introduced with a focus on the separate business lines such as public safety, land management, health and human services. These individuals help to understand the business need and translate the need into IT solutions while working closely together to find technology solutions that meet the needs of multiple agencies. Additionally, OIT realized the need to expand our project management office and create a portfolio management office. You can go to the next slide. In order to successfully manage the large portfolio of IT projects from all areas of the county, OIT developed and expanded a full project management office. All project managers are PMP certified and follow standard PMP processes. This standardization has allowed us to manage and hold our vendors accountable at each stage of a project through fixed price contracts with deliverable-based milestone payments. Project scope is fully defined with the vendor to ensure all items are included in the fixed price of the contract. Only additional scope needs will alter the price paid to the vendor. It is the responsibility of the project manager to ensure projects are on time, on budget, and in scope. Project managers utilize enterprise project management software with full resourcing capabilities. Project health is monitored throughout the life cycle of the project with stage gates of approval and escalation points for risk mitigation. OIT averages 90% of major projects completed on time and within budget. You can go to the next slide. A standard red, yellow, green health of projects is reported weekly on all major projects. This is an example of the OIT project health dashboard used to monitor and pinpoint potential issues quickly. This, in conjunction with our portfolio management office, allows OIT to track all aspects of IT projects from inception to completion. You can go to the next slide, please.
Good morning. OIT Project Portfolio Management is responsible for managing, tracking, and reporting on funding for all IT projects. This includes facilitating standing committee meetings where representatives from each IT area get together to discuss project requests. It is through these discussions that projects are sized based on their level of effort, determined which county strategic goals will be met. They are ranked by priority, resource availability is determined, and funding needs are identified. A proposal for next fiscal year's funding is created based on these new project requests. The proposal is reviewed and vetted with executive leadership in order to obtain funding. Project activation, status, and remediation of projects are also reviewed at standing committee meetings. OIT Project Portfolio Management processes all purchase requests in a timely manner and monitors the portfolio spending plans. They work closely with IT contract management to ensure purchases are done using the appropriate contract vehicles. Projects are funded using multiple funding sources, all with different business rules. There are two main funding sources for IT initiatives, one that funds the project purchases and the other that funds end-of-life equipment replacement based on industry best practices. Computer equipment does not live forever. Monthly pro forma meetings are held with senior management to review how much has been spent to date and what is remaining. And to complete the IT project portfolio lifecycle, financial closure of projects are done by making sure all invoices are paid, any remaining funds are disencumbered, and delivery orders and purchase orders are closed. Next slide, please.
Good morning, everyone. OIT is responsible for creating and publishing technical specifications and standards. We have a technical standards committee which meets monthly to create, review, and revise the county's technical standards. After project activation, OIT works with the using agency to document technical requirements based on the county's existing IT system infrastructure, specifications and standards, and the agency's business need. In addition to purchasing standard templates, OIT, law, and purchasing have created standardized templates and processes for OIT to expedite the creation and review of proposals, vendor selection, and the negotiation process. Examples of these templates include a scope of work for building out a project scope and a service level agreement to outline a vendor's requirements for managing product support. We have standard language for the technology type being purchased, including data security, 508 compliance, and support language for SaaS applications. OIT provides centralized management of IT contracts using existing mechanisms for purchase whenever possible. A benefit of IT being fully centralized is our ability to check across agencies for existing platforms which meet newly identified requirements. This saves the county from a loss of time and revenue on unnecessary procurements. If an existing mechanism is not identified, we proceed with competitive solicitation. Vendors are selected based on their ability to meet the functional and technical requirements of the solicitation. And then, technology solicitations include a form created by OIT to allow the respondent to identify their product capability to meet each requirement. The form scores all responses based on fixed criteria and provides blind scoring, which purchasing can then provide to the technical review committee during proposal evaluation. Next slide, please. From the time a system need is identified through project go live is a highly collaborative period. OIT works closely with law, purchasing, the specific agency to evaluate and review all systems, their related contracts, statement of work, and agreement. OIT has fixed bi-weekly meetings with law and purchasing to review new IT system projects and review the best contracting mechanism for each system. We use this time to discuss new projects, existing project status, and the procurement mechanism that will be used for each system. Continuing in the spirit of consolidation, contracts for IT systems are centrally negotiated with IT for consistency. Some of the benefits recognized from the fixed standards includes regularity of project standards management and contract management. Parties active in this process have come to look to these regularities when performing their role. Multiple parties make up the IT component of the review team. Technical staff, including security, review all contracts for technical competency. Security is vital to IT. Standard security protocols are required and reviewed for all vendors. When PII and HIPAA are identified, additional security protocols are immediately enacted to ensure that data is protected and compliance in federal and state law is met. Pricing and terms are negotiated for every new contract entered into by OIT, including piggyback agreements. Even with the county's requirement that a competitively bid contract must be used for a piggyback agreement, we still negotiate to ensure technical and security requirements are met and the best price possible is achieved. Primary part of our review is research of the system, where we identify similar use cases within other jurisdictions and reach out to those jurisdictions for feedback regarding their experience in the negotiation, implementation, and management of the system. OIT and purchasing require fixed price for all systems. Utilizing deliverable-based milestones, our project manager is able to review, approve, and accept each milestone based on set criteria. Each milestone carries a fixed cost for completion. This approach allows for ease of budget management, reduces the risk of unplanned expenditures, and reduces a project manager's project resource hours by removing the task of auditing time records. Next slide, please. IT holds several contracts that have been awarded to multiple vendors from a single procurement to ensure the county receives the best price after award, limiting gaps in product availability, better service speed, and faster emergency response times. An example is our IT consulting and technical service contract. IT CATS is a competitively bid procurement, which led to 24 separate contracts for 17 functional areas and specialized IT staffing. The second bullet here says it all. The IT CATS contract provides autonomy in procurement, allowing IT resources to be acquired quickly, efficiently, and competitively, which has never been more important than now during the COVID response. A measurable success of the IT CATS program is the impact it provided the county initiative for reduction of supplemental staffing. Using IT CATS, OIT has brought on project-specific subject matter experts, which has led to a 46% reduction in use of supplemental staff. IT holds several contracts for procurements awarded to multiple vendors. Our practice is to write every equipment, peripheral, and service procurement to allow multiple awardees. The redundancy in resources has proven critical to our success in times of equipment failure breach, and upgrades. It helps to ensure that critical components are almost always available and on-call support is received quickly. The vendors are aware there are other awardees, which encourages them to provide the best pricing and support available throughout the life of the contract. Next slide, please. OIT has contracts with multiple VARs. Some benefits of these contracts mirror those mentioned in the last slide, but I'd like to speak to the redundant resource again. Although each VAR has their own specialty or focus, there is duplication in their offering. This was critical to OIT's COVID response when OIT was outfitting thousands of county employees for remote access. Our vendors' inventory was quickly depleting, making multiple contracts necessary to fulfill the county's need. In light of recent security events, our access to these vendors allowed OIT to run a quick analysis of our system to make sure all security protocols were in place. Other benefits essential to OIT's management of critical systems is our VAR's ability to assist in engineering support, providing resources to the county when reviewing system architecture. Their vast and current product knowledge gives us a better view into current systems and new items to market. This also affords them the ability to assist in our management of technology improvements in real time. Lastly, they are able to provide a turnkey solution which allows us to work with one vendor for the whole of a project versus multiple vendors. This frees up time and provides ease of management while decreasing risk of errors and omissions for every county resource involved in the process discussed today. Next slide, please.
Come off of mute. There we go. Clue, you can catch your breath now. So thank you, Pam, Dana, and Clue. So hopefully you can see that it's through all these processes, regulations, and standards that we can say that Baltimore County is being responsible and fair with the use of our taxpayer dollars. Technology has become integral to every aspect and every service in county government. OIT supports every agency and every level of technology they utilize to do their daily jobs effectively. But it's also our job to ensure the security, the reliability, and the usability of the data and these systems. We take selection, awarding, and purchasing of all IT equipment and services very serious, making sure that we have at our ready purchasing tools to acquire what is needed in emergencies, such as Clue referred to in these COVID times. But we also ensure that our selection process is fair, measuring ability, experience, and equity across all vendors. This is why many jurisdictions look to Baltimore County for possible piggyback award solutions, as we often do with other large jurisdictions like Prince George's, Montgomery, and Fairfax counties. As in any technology or any good process, change is a constant, and there's always room for improvement. The county has made a large investment to move to a best-of-breed ERP solution, which is Workday. We will be discussing that project next month. OIT, OBF, and HR will approach the selection and implementation of Workday and how we will change and improve to utilize this system to better the abilities of the county. So we're not just putting good technology over bad process, we are looking at the entire process as a whole. I thank you all for your time, and we are open to questions. I'm sure there are many.
I have a question as relates to since everything is centralized in the OT, IT, and all the other agencies go through there, how do you determine meeting certain MBE, WBE goals, as well as how diverse is the prime contractors as relates to the IT industry for Baltimore County?
So we make sure that, as you heard, we have purchasing and law involved in every contract as well. So we as IT, we look towards purchasing to ensure that every measure is being reported when it comes to MB and WBE for each and every project that we do. And for our master agreements, any purchase that's needed, if you're thinking of equipment as well, we have to approve that, and it comes through our process. And this is where Ms. Platt had alluded to. It stops from kind of those backdoor purchases and not utilizing these mechanisms that have been fully vetted by OIT and purchasing and Carla Tucker and her team to make sure that they do adhere to and meet to each and every requirement.
A company who wants to do business in the IT industry with Baltimore County would register as a vendor through the IT department?
Through purchasing.
Through purchasing.
Yes, ma'am.
So Rob, if you look at the 24 IT CATS holders, what is the diversity of the master agreement holders? And you may or may not know, what are the goals? I believe there were goals of.
I believe at that time, but I would like to pull the data. I believe the goal was at a 15%. I will defer to purchasing on that, and we would need to get data on each one of the usage of these contracts and how they met MBE, WBE levels. And I think that's kind of what Elizabeth was talking to before, that as these questions come up, we'll have to acquire this data. I'm sorry, that's just something I wouldn't have off the top of my head right now.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
And those are questions, Elizabeth, that I would have. In terms of just pure procurement processes, when you look over the history, particularly of, and I'm familiar with CATS more at the state level, somewhat familiar with what the county has done, and I know there are a few firms that have been involved in that, both larger primes and some of the minority businesses. When you look at these procurement vehicles, often there may be 24 companies that are awarded, but really utilization may be with 3 or 4. And I often wonder, is that in the best interest of a municipality or state government? How are we doing in terms of utilization? And this is not an MBE question, just in general, in
across
terms
all
of
4.
Yeah, across the VAR program that you have. Have we consolidated these purchases with a few, or are we really using kind of everybody out there to keep the competition high?
That's a great question. So in the IT CATs, if we could kind of look at that one first, as Christina or Clue had alluded to, there's 24 different mechanisms that are out there covering 17 functional areas. How we handle this is when we identify a need for a subject matter expert, and we actually just utilize this outside of almost an IT type industry for our permits and inspections office, as they needed staff to come in and needed engineers to assist. We literally are completely equitable by this. When we identify and these vendors kind of report and say, we meet these functional areas, this is part of the solicitation, we email each and every one of those vendors, and each and every one of those vendors has the opportunity to submit resumes. Then we go through an interview process almost like we were hiring an individual. We honestly do not care which vendor they come from. We are looking for the best individual to meet that immediate need. So we have hired sometimes 3 from one contractor, 1 from another contractor. There is very little consistency, I would say. Obviously, there are larger firms that submit more resumes than others, but we make it as equitable as possible that everybody has the opportunity to select individuals on their bench to submit for our review. As it comes to our larger VARs, yes, it is true that some tend to get more business than others. I honestly, for me being in the position that I'm in, when it came to COVID, actually one of our leading VARs for supplying us hardware and equipment fell down the ladder rung during COVID because they didn't have availability. Because they were popular in that market area, their resources depleted quickly. As you can imagine, I made a joke one time that people thought toilet paper was hard to get. Try and buy a laptop. So it truly got to that point. So we were having to leverage, and thankfully we had 3 different mechanisms to find the greatest availability and the best pricing so that we could get our employees up and running as fast as possible. So you are correct that sometimes there will be tendencies depending upon price and availability that will lead to a larger VAR, but COVID was a perfect example of why you keep multiple mechanisms available.
And with some of those smaller VARs, were they local?
Yeah, so I mean, I can tell you one. I'll use one for example that was able to fulfill specific needs, but wasn't able to fulfill others. So we kind of distributed the workload. Hartford Computer Group, which was local, and then we also dealt with CDW, who is global and large. So we were using small and large to kind of fill and plug every hole possible to get us through. And knock on wood, I would leave that to my county administrator or somebody else to say. I think Baltimore County actually did an exceptional job. We had 300 individuals working from home the first week of when COVID started. That was just a regular for us. And in 3 weeks, we had 3,000 individuals working from home successfully. So that is quite an impressive rollout. And I thank my department and the agencies for quickly adapting to this, but it would have been impossible without having all of these mechanisms at our ready.
Understood. With the, I would like to know kind of the mix of both on CATS and on the VARs of large versus minority versus small local. I think, and are there any incentives that you're aware of, Rob, in our selection process that looks at small, local, or minority as a preference or as a way of, from a social economic perspective on improving the economy in the geography?
I wouldn't say that there are preferences, and I don't want to answer for purchasing. I know that in my history of working through all the contracts in the decades that I have been here, when we have open bid, we work very closely to make sure that our smaller subs are well aligned with primes, that is beneficial for both and gives the county a better overall awardee than just a prime alone. Because it is these smaller subs and these local companies that, people may say, okay, I'm just being honest and blunt. It was to meet numbers. Let's be honest and blunt. That's kind of what people would say. But for us, it also is, for an IT standpoint, response time. Having people available and local is huge for us, because some things can't be corrected, fixed, or addressed just remotely. So having local entities, and sometimes those are your smaller companies that sub underneath your larger primes, has been extremely beneficial to keep this county operating 365, 24/7. So that's kind of how I look at it as an IT standpoint. The big company may have the best pricing in California, but that doesn't help me when I'm sitting here in Baltimore County.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Rose. If I could interject, I kind of want to go back, Mr. Phillips, on some of your previous questions. I just want you to know that, purchasing can definitely pull all of that historical data in reference to the IT contracts. How many are, certified MBE, WBE firms, which ones are local, which ones are out of state. So we can pull that for you. And also, I just want to mention that in reference to preference, this is why we work with Carla's team, the MBE, WBE department, on every solicitation to determine where we can find, those opportunities to assist with, any, preference or local and things of that nature. So I didn't want you to think that we didn't hear you and that I wasn't going to pull that information. I wrote it down loud and clear, and we'll get that over to you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dan
Let me
Moore
ask this
here.
question. Oh, go ahead.
Is there some, okay.
Can I ask a brief question as
Go ahead.
relates to this issue? So is it Carla's shop that does the monitoring when when this selection is made of the subs, and if they are getting that business with that prime, that they, meet those numbers? Who's monitoring and tracking to make sure that it's happening?
So it is the NBEW departments or Carla's group that does the compliance and monitoring those goals that subject to contracts. And I think Carla is on this
Carla's on
call that you want to speak to that.
I'm on, yes. With the IT CATS contract, the participation, I believe I have to look it up again, but I believe it was 25% on a per task basis. So we would be looking at it at a per task basis. And when a project was solicited by IT, it should come to the MBE office for review. The MBE plan on that task should come to the MBE office for review and approval or rejection for correction or whatever the case may be at that time. But I would have to go back and look to see where we are on that actual contract.
Hi, Dan is here. First, Rob, thank you and your team for the presentation. Thank you for making some of the slides a larger font size so us senior citizens could read them. And also, I hope the information that Scott and Sheila asked for will be shared with everybody in the general way. because I think we're all interested in that. So it's posted as part of the whole thing. My question to shift, Rob, has to do with ransomware and cyber attacks. We've had them in Baltimore City, DMC, MedStar, and the school system. And I brought up the school system before, and this is an area that's more open-ended, but there's a Sun article, and I'll just quote: Baltimore County school officials have refused to share information with local police, the county attorney, and the state information technology experts about the catastrophic cyber attack that hit the systems. In a highly critical letter, county executive called it, quote, troubling that they're not cooperating with county police and so on. And so just a series of questions, and some may not actually, Rob, be for you. I assume you're going to say that we are well protected from ransomware. Have you worked, first question then would be, have you worked with the schools to help them? And on a larger question for the group, rather than, the schools get about half the county budget, more or less. And I certainly don't think the county needs to be interfering with curriculum and that kind of stuff. But one of the recommendations I think this group ought to consider is not just say, well, the schools, that's part on the Department of Education. That those laws can be changed. It may be changed at the local level, it may be changed at the state level. But I've long felt that the procurement, when half the budget is going to schools, certainly for some things, and IT in particular now, might be folded in together. And I don't know what levers or can be done without legislation. Maybe the county council can act and say, put strings on the money that goes to the schools. But it's really troubling from a citizen point of view that our school system, my kids, all three kids graduate from Baltimore County Public Schools. They're long graduated, but gets a cyber attack, and county executive and presumably down to you, Rob, and your team are not involved in that. So how can we deal with that issue?
Sure. So I'm going to try and address these in order. So, I will never say, and no IT director should ever say, that we are perfect and we will not, fall under attack. We hired about 3 to 4 years ago, probably one of the top CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers in the state. He was a CISO for the state. We have had a focus on security probably since I've been here. What we continue to do is continue to assess, and test against ourselves for vulnerabilities. It is not a technology approach that solves this. We are obviously always implementing new technology to better our posture with security. But what we have also found is that education is the largest piece of this. And that's why here in the county, and the state also does this, but we hold monthly training that each and every county employee must take. And if they do not keep up with their training, we actually lock them out of being able to access their systems and log into the county network. It is that education that I think that has circumvented many of attacks that have gotten past the many different firewalls and intrusion protection and web appliances and email appliances that every jurisdiction spends hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on. It's that one single human error. And that's what you will probably find when you drill down to the BCPS incident, when you drill down to the city incident, the GBMC, is the one email, the one phishing attempt that somebody clicked on and filled out information, and then it kind of snowballs from there. We continue to fund fairly, and I will always, I'll be honest with you, ask for more for our security initiatives. We look for industry standards and best practices. We do work closely with BCPS and always have worked closely with BCPS. As many here may not be aware, we are actually the carrier for BCPS. So our entire fiber network connects the Baltimore County elementary, middle, and high schools. So we do work very closely with their IT department. This attack was something that, as those who may have been involved when the city went under attack, is something that is earth-shattering. And it is your ability to recover and your ability to keep business operations moving during a recovery that is typically the most scrutinized. I can tell you that when this happened, it happened 2 days before Thanksgiving. And I subsequently spent probably the next 4 weeks having at least 3 to 4 meetings a day with BCPS, including Thanksgiving. I still continue to sit and chair along with Chief Bykall from the fire department, an emergency operations type command that Baltimore County has stood up to assist BCPS. We were able to assist them with getting people paid, getting them devices so that nurses could do contract tracing, discussing their next steps. So not only putting, getting operations back up and running, but as they looked forward to improving their security posture and changing their processes and changing the way that they do things so that they would be not susceptible again in the future. So Jim Corns, who is the director at BCPS for their IT department, and I have had many conversations and worked closely together. In the beginning, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but when you go under such an investigation, there are federal level investigators that are involved, and sometimes a lot of, guidance that is given is to talk to no one at this point in time from a federal level, which created a very difficult situation for Baltimore County and BCPS as we tried to work closely together. My county executive, I would say, took a very strong stance that we have to protect the students and the parents, and we need to work closer together. Recently, actually, Baltimore County government on Monday just sent out letters to staff and faculty and students of 18 and older for credit monitoring for the next 12 months. So we are highly engaged in this from a technical standpoint, from an operational standpoint, and from kind of a planning and strategic standpoint moving forward. So I don't know if I answered all of your questions.
You've done a lot. Thank you very much. Do we need, should this be one IT system instead of it sounds like they're operating one, you're operating one, and
I will be honest with you, that's been talked about from many people. There needs to be a DMARC when it comes to that, and us being able to provide services like their network, which reduces costs, throughout the county, is a lot different than their IT needs and our IT needs. You got to also remember that the schools are on a MEEK program. And I'll be honest with you, I wish I could purchase things at the same price that schools get to purchase at. So it becomes you can't combine the two when you're looking at.
Explain me.
So I'm going to interject here because I wanted to flag this generally, but it's the right point to flag it. The county and the school system have jointly worked on procurement of a vendor to do an efficiency audit. And Rob and I and Ed Blades is on this call. We were part of the panel. We have indeed selected a vendor, and the project will be rolled out, and it will, dare say, shed light on some of these areas where it would seem that some efficiency would be generated by things being joint, but they will explore whether that's really the case. I do intend to have the commission briefed and as to the scope of the project, and then hopefully their work will finish before this commission finishes, and I think there'll be a lot of interesting information to reveal. So I think this is an important conversation, and I'm also talked to Phil about whether you all want to invite BCPS to present at a meeting, but I also think this efficiency audit, it's really an efficiency assessment, which again has been procured jointly with the school, so we're in collaboration, will greatly inform some of the questions that you've asked Delegate Morheim, and it's one reason we're doing it.
That's efficiency beyond IT, I guess.
Beyond IT, it's okay, system-wide for both the county and the schools. That is the full scope, and we hope to be kicking it off soon. Early February would be my hope. So more to come, but I do think this is important. As Rob pointed out, some of the angles and more I think will be uncovered through this efficiency review that I just described.
Last question, thank you, but what would be the timetable for the report from the efficiency review? How would that coordinate with our efforts?
It's an aggressive timetable to have something, so if we say 6 months, so in the summer, so before your November report is due. Not as much to reveal before the May deadline for this commission, but definitely the right coincidence of work on the back end of the commission's tenure, definitely.
Rob, I'm sorry. Rob and team, I really appreciate the presentation, and the structure you've described sounds to me as if it hits all the right buttons in terms of cooperative purchasing and negotiations and finding vendors and master list contracting and the like. The questions that have been asked about MBE and small business and geographic considerations, I think, are all important. So we'll look forward to getting that information. It again sounds like a great structure is in place, but what are your challenges? How would you improve upon that structure, and what do you see going forward? What kinds of issues or challenges do you see for IT procurement?
I would say the number one challenge that we have, and that we, hopefully will be something that is also addressed as we move into this new system. I'm grateful for, I'll be honest with you, our purchasing department that we have, our Office of Law that we have, and especially for my team. The issues that we had probably 5 years ago have gotten much better, and that was speed to procurement. In technology, as you can imagine, things almost change daily. And we now live in a world where people are expecting solutions immediately. Through this COVID experience, whether it was purchasing or having enterprise type solutions, and I think Elizabeth can probably attest to this, there were times where we were able to solution needs such as grant applications within days or within weeks, instead of taking months or a year, which our constituents cannot wait for. And I think that's something that we will have to continue to work on and improving moving forward, is the timetable to make sure that as we are doing solicitations, getting respondents, reviewing them, and awarding, that we can streamline those, but also ensuring that we are meeting and checking every box that is done correctly. I think that would probably be my number one.
Okay, that's helpful. That's helpful to know. Are there questions from other commissioners? Yes, Peter.
Before I ask two questions, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware that Senator Chris West has introduced legislation to the newly begun General Assembly session for more oversight of Baltimore County Public School System. I can't quote the details, but the commissioners might be interested in that. My two questions were, one, what is the OIT annual budget for equipment and services? And the second question is, project management certification was mentioned. PMP certified was given for your project managers. What does that mean? Who certifies that?
So I'll take the first one, as we will get that information to you. We have multiple different funding mechanisms, so I want it to be complete. So we will take that as a note, and we will present that for everyone. And then I would actually ask Pam Platt to answer the second question.
So PMP is project management professional. Sorry, it is a certification that is used nationally, and it's through the project management. Actually, what is their full title? Let's see. Sorry, I apologize, but it's a national certification, and it's actually you have to prove that you have managed projects. You have to have there's trainings that you have to obtain. Then there is a test, which is a very rigorous test. And then beyond that, it is a certification that is maintained yearly with additional education.
Thank you. And
Project Management Institute, I apologize.
Thank you. And on the budget, when you do present the information to the commissioners, Rob, I'm sure a lot of the budget is actually within the agencies.
No.
Oh, so Public Works doesn't have its own IT budget.
Correct. We are 100% centralized, including funding, which actually created that equity for all the agencies. Because if you can imagine, as Pam and I were talking this morning, she remembers the day where, and I mean it's nicely, but police got everything they wanted and corrections got nothing. So we had to have that equity across the agencies as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other questions from commissioners? Yes, Steve.
Good morning. Quick question, Rob and Christina. You had mentioned that you use piggyback contracts occasionally. The rules for piggybacking are the same for you as in other agencies, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So when you say you can negotiate, it really depends on the contract that you are piggybacking, flexibility with scope and things that you can ultimately get, or do you still need to use the contract that you're piggybacking in the exact way it was procured, correct?
Correct. I will let Christina jump in, but typically, I mean, my top guidelines are that A, it was obviously competitively bid, and then B, terms and conditions that we agree to cannot be lesser than terms and conditions in that current contract. We always try to better the county's position through negotiation. But Clue, I'll let you kind of jump in.
So yeah, that's correct. Ultimately with piggyback, what we're able to negotiate, so there are the standard terms that we have to meet, but we are able to go in and do better than, as Rob says. Where that makes a difference, we can negotiate better pricing. We can negotiate better service contracts. There are actually things that we can negotiate through even after the fact. That baseline has to be maintained and stay the same, but we can do better then. And so we take that opportunity whenever possible.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Bill, this is Elizabeth. I just wanted to clarify that one of the county executive's top legislative priorities is also the bill that Peter referenced about greater oversight and accountability for our partners in the school system. So this will be an ongoing topic throughout the life of this commission, and I do hope that we not only we will share the efficiency audit progress, but also perhaps invite BCPS counterparts for overview discussion when you all decide it would be a good time to do so.
Great. Peter, did you have a question? I think your hand was up.
Yes, I did. Thank you. I was just wondering if this might be the time to discuss it, is with IT and everything. Is the county looking at doing some electronic bidding or electronic submission of quotes and that type of thing? Where are we with that? I know it gets too expensive. State Highway has the email marketplace and BidX. Mm-hmm. And actually, I just submitted a bid this morning to State Highway on a roads project. But and I know it's expensive to implement it, but the cost savings could be significant. I'm just wondering, where's the county with that, or are we? Is it being looked at?
Robbie, you want me to talk about before you go and what we may do in the future? I can talk about what we're doing right now.
Yeah, Rose, that'd be great.
Okay, great. So currently right now, we are receiving our bids or proposal responses electronically. OIT has helped us designate a specific email account that we include in our solicitation that is secure, that bidders and offers can submit their submission. We also post our solicitation on the state EMA procurement webpage. So to answer your question, Peter, we do receive electronic proposals and bids now.
And my response to that from a technology standpoint is the presentation that will be next month, Workday. We are moving to a better ERP system, and procurement is a very large part of that. And we will be making process and technology changes when we move to this new system at this year's end. I think that's probably the best I can state to that. But we will address that in next month's presentation for Workday as well.
Hey Rob, I'm sorry, I just wanted to, because I wanted to ask this while it was fresh, and you mentioned Workday again. Mm-hmm. On the Workday, how much work has gone into modifying county processes to meet kind of standard Workday versus customizing Workday to meet current county processes? Does that make sense?
Yes, customization is a curse word in IT nowadays. We are configuration. So we have had a model. Pam and I years ago kind of put together a plan, and then this administration came in, we solidified the plan to meet the strategic goals of the county. But to move the county to best of breed solutions, when I first met the county executive, I had a discussion with him about, the county shouldn't be dealing with the best of the worst. And we need to move to best of breed solutions, things like Workday. And what that will mean is that when we move to these industry standards and these large enterprise systems, that some of the antiquated processes that still live here, and I told them a joke that we have here. We call it the 1851 rule. That's when the county was seated, and we've been doing it since 1851. So why would we change it today? So that being said, I actually want Pam to chime in, but we have many work groups working through across every single agency, looking at every process that we do for procurement and even our HR processes as well to best fit industry standard. So I would, Pam, if you could probably comment a little bit on that.
Yeah, so I would agree. I think that we have multiple committees working across the board to take a look at what needs to change to take advantage of the system that is at hand. We also are taking items to our unions and saying, these are the things that we believe will need to change and getting their buy-in and their participation. So we're working hard on that, and we will not be customizing the system. It was all configuration.
One of the other questions I had, and I want to be mindful of time here because we have a lot yet to cover. This presentation has been terrific. Thank you. What do you hear from vendors? Do vendors offer any suggestions or solutions? I'm not talking about Workday now. I'm just talking about the selection process, the listing process, the master contracting process. So you can share about what you're hearing from the contracting community.
I think that's actually one of the things that we have struggled with vendors, and I would probably have Pam or Clue chime in. I think they are getting better. Since we are looking at products that are again, best of breeds, if you look at a Workday, I think one of the presentations that we had to the executive team, I said that if Google and Amazon are using Workday, and they are two companies that could build their own ERP system, that should tell you something about that type of solution. However, their entry into local state government market has been recent in like the past 3 to 5 years. A lot of these large companies do not understand how local and state governments operate, and they lack that education. But I've seen that growing in the past couple of years, understanding that trying to address every single small entity individually isn't the best approach, especially for us as we talk about that speed to market. And understanding that, like Clue was saying, if we have the availability to look at competitively bid contracts. So as we are looking at solutions and we go out and we say, we're going to demo these 3 or 4 things, and then we're going to go out to, an RFP, that coming to the table with competitively bid contracts that we can better negotiate and meets all of the requirements, whether it's MBE, WBE, our technical requirements and our purchasing requirements, is advantageous. I'll be honest with you. No,
and I get that, and I appreciate that, and I may not have asked the question very well. But what I'm interested in knowing is vendors or potential vendors who come to the county, IT vendors. Are you or your team hearing things from them about, gee, we didn't know about the opportunity, or we're not sure why you have this indemnification provision in your terms and conditions, or we don't understand the process, or your process could be better, or why don't you do it like Jones County, and I'm making this up, Montana. Just wonder if you're hearing any of that you could share with the commission.
Pam, would you like to comment on that? Pam is my Christina's my contract specialist, but Pam is my hard contract negotiator.
Noted.
Well, and honestly, and then you hit on the indemnification as always, and that's law. That is our legal office, and they do a great job of pushing that. It has helped us that we do take those hard lines on contracts, and we definitely have had vendors come back and say, wow, your contracts are so intense and you have so much. But I can tell you our issues with vendors and our ability to be consistent has changed dramatically once we were able to partner with law and purchasing and have those provisions solidified. So it has made a difference. Do we sometimes get complaints? Yes. Do some of the vendors, they come in and surprise us because they're already there? Yes, absolutely. Some vendors we have to bring along, but it's been very much worth that effort.
And I would state that, it may be a good cop, bad cop, or bad cop, bad cop thing. I like to negotiate the pricing, but when it comes to terms and conditions and making sure that language from our law office and our purchasing office are in each one of our contracts, Pam is exceptional at that, because we've been here for a while and we've seen where the county's been bitten because we didn't have the right language and we weren't able to truly hold a vendor accountable to making sure that the deliverables were met. So, our contracts may be stringent, but again, that's why other jurisdictions know that if it's a Baltimore County contract, it's probably safe to piggyback. And I thank my purchasing and law office for that too.
Peter, I think you had a question. And just mindful of time, we'll make this the last question, but please go ahead.
Just real quick, yeah. From the contracting end, I can say Bouts at Baltimore County is very consistent in their the legal aspect of the contracts, and I think it's good because we have to compete with many other contractors, and it's good to have a consistent terms and conditions. So I'm glad to see that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, on behalf of all the other commissioners, Rob, Pam, Dana, Christina, thank you so much for the presentations. Very helpful. We'll look forward to hearing about Workday next month. But again, thank you for your efforts at your presentation, your answers to your questions, and we'll look forward to having the information that has been requested. And with that, I would like to move to the fourth item on the agenda, which is commission business. There are two parts to this. The first part is Elizabeth has a couple of things she'd like to point out about the county executive's November 24, 2020 executive order, which created the commission and is the reason we are here meeting today. And I will ask Elizabeth to.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to call it up. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Take a break.
I'm sharing the executive order.
That'd be great. Actually, I realized I might not have been able to do it. Okay. So I think you've all seen this, or I know we sent it around earlier in this process, and it's a broad overview of why we're here and what we're doing, and the fact that a lot of the topics that will be covered by the commission have been captured as necessary to better understand and then reform, modernize. It's been captured as part of our enterprise strategic plan. Some aspects of our process have been further highlighted as we respond in this emergency situation, which is going on almost a year now. I know, so that's flagged here in part. So as you can see, the goal is to do a comprehensive review and evaluation of our county procurement and contracting trends and policies, including a focus on small, minority, and women-owned businesses. I think there's a glitch there, but anyway, to develop recommendations for review by the county executive and the county council. So the membership, it's finally that's what we focus on at first, and we reach out to all of you, and the appointments are made. We have set 10 meetings. The dates have been set. I decided not to say monthly because I know there are times like August when we don't always need to meet, so I kept it at 10. But as you all know, we're meeting like monthly, and I think it's great. And I really want to thank you all for your time commitment on a very regular basis, because having managed work groups and commissions before, I think the regularity really helps work done and keep all of us engaged. So thank you so much for the commitment for most months. We do have a quorum requirement. And then this gets into a little more detail about what's going to be evaluated. And actually, I feel this is a good segue into this conversation, but as a broad overview, looking at existing policies, practices, and business processes, and formulating recommendations for streamlining and improving both the functions themselves and their outcome. And then looking at trends in particular affecting small minority and women-owned businesses, and specific recommendations for improvement there. And this is the real reason that I wanted to walk through, and Phil, I think, agreed, this EO is because there is an interim report that will be due at the end of May, and then the final report will be due at the end of November. We have, in several different contexts, done the sort of interim and final requirement for commissions and work groups. And I'm going to put in the chat the link to the Commission on Fiscal Sustainability, which I've mentioned before. It was our first commission, and Ed Blades is on this call, and we worked on that together. And there was an interim report. It was 6 weeks or so after the commission was formed. So to me, May seems like a long time to have to do an interim. And then we worked on some other issues and then rolled it all up into a comprehensive report by the due date. So that's just an example of how it worked, but I want to share it so people with Phil's direction can begin to think about what it's going to mean to present something publicly on May 31 and then a final report with recommendations by the end of the commission's term. And we have a web page on the public input. We have a public web page, which I can also share the link. We have an email address. I don't believe we've gotten any emails, have we, Jasmine?
We have not, which I'm not upset about, but.
I mean, I think this is another point we could talk about either today or, at the commission's direction. To what extent do we want to encourage public participation? There's one way of doing it when you're virtual, and then of course we know what inviting members of the public to present to the commission would mean, because we used to be all in person and we know what that looks like. We do it virtually, so it's doable for sure. So that's probably something we should talk through if it's of interest to the commission.
I will say the WebEx is the full schedule for the meetings is on our webpage, as well as the public WebEx link. And then it shows up on the county WebEx events page. So it is publicly published. The attendees we have today are all county people, but I think we had a couple members of the public for the first one.
I think the announcement went out the day before Thanksgiving, and so probably got buried in there someplace. Just didn't make news. It's not, interesting time to release that. I think we should invite public input. It doesn't necessarily mean coming to all the meetings and speaking or something like that. But I did send some information at this to my local Chamber of Commerce, for example, and said if any business people there have ideas. I think we should do a modicum of outreach, but not necessarily have meetings taken over with public testimony. But certainly encourage people, especially vendors, and MBEs, and write in what their problems are. We found that very useful when I was at the state level, because they have a perspective that sometimes it's hard to otherwise to hear or to get.
Well, yeah, Dan, that's a great point. And I'm sorry, and a great segue, I think. But I'm sorry, someone else was about to speak. Go ahead.
Well, I was saying I would agree. I sent out information to Maryland Minority Contractors members to get feedback from them from different areas. And they've sent me information. And I think sending it out to vendors and others helps and allow them to bring it in writing, because I got a whole list for certain departments. And so I'm going to do another outreach to get any kind of concerns or issues from people who have attempted to do business with Baltimore County, as well as current vendors.
Yeah, I think it's incumbent upon the commission to take steps to gather information, including having some folks testify. We'll see how things roll out in the next month or two. But in terms of our information gathering process, because I think we need to hear from all the stakeholders, and But Elizabeth, unless you had something else on the executive order, I'd like to move ahead.
Let me just
Yes,
one
I
more
do
time
not.
pick. Let me just one before what Sheila said. I think is right on. We could always devote one meeting with enough advance public notice and say this entire meeting is devoted to public testimony, and we'll just listen. And that's another way to do it.
No, that's a great point. And the other thing I have to say that's in the executive order is, and I'm laser focused on May 31 and November 30, but we've got monthly meetings set up. We may need to have extra meetings. We may need to have some groups of us take a particular issue and really focus on it and come back and report to the larger commission, just because there's a lot to get the commission's arms around, if you will. So let me go to this other aspect here, which is, again, trying to get our arms around what we need to accomplish, trying to sort out within the context or within the parameters that the county executive has given us in the executive order, what we really should focus on. Obviously, we have to, and we will, and will want to address what's in the executive order. But in terms of who we hear from, where we go, how we gather the information, and then how we pull all that together for purposes of these two reports, those are all things I'd like to explore now and get everybody's thoughts on. So the document that is entitled Procurement Chronology 5 Stages has a draft stamp on it because it's a fluid or a working document. It's something that I prepared shortly before the December holiday, after the last meeting. Again, procurement is it's a huge subject. Without getting too wonkish about it, we could probably spend at least an hour, if not more, on every one of these bullet points that's on this document, but we don't clearly have the time or the bandwidth for that. But I thought it would be helpful at least to put together sort of the 5 stages of a procurement, if you will, and then within each of those 5 stages, what sorts of topics or processes or events typically occur. And then I also tried to take the questions, comments, suggestions that commissioners have shared and plug them in, just at least to get try to get a comprehensive list of subject matters under each of the 5 topics. So we'd really like everybody's input on that. But I've set it up this way because these are the 5 stages. They are sequential, and but I don't think we're going to, given the overlap, I don't think we're going to have time to walk through each of these before our May report is done. At least not covering every one of these things in detail. So
Phil,
yeah.
This is Rose. Just a recommendation. Would it be beneficial to take the 5 stages you have, and then, we can, purchasing can work with, other agencies like law, OIT, maybe put some document together for each one of these stages and present it to the group?
Well, I think that would be, I think it'd be very helpful. What I was going to say is, apropos of sequencing, so next month we will hear about Workday, and we also will, and then in March we're going to have we're going to hear about MBE and WBE and the like. We're going to hear from the Department of Public Works next month. And so for purposes, I'm sorry, to answer that question, yes, that would be helpful. I know everybody's got a million other things they have to do, but I'm particularly interested in hearing what the commissioners might want to highlight from each of these 5 categories. So it might help direct some of the efforts of the people at the county who would be putting that document together. But the identification of the need for procured products or services, which is the first item, We heard from the purchasing office. That was the first meeting. We'll hear from the Department of Public Works next month. I understand we'll also hear about the Professional Services Selection Committee. I'd also like to hear about what happens with unsolicited proposals. I don't know how deep that discussion is, but I think that is be helpful to know where that goes. When you get to selection of procurement vehicle and method, again, we've got the background on that. I know there's been interest in cooperative purchasing, piggyback purchasing, purchasing among other entities. And I don't know that, for example, I'm just pulling one out, emergency purchases. I don't know if there are any issues with emergency purchases. There may not be any issues from the county's view, but there might be from the vendors' views, from contractors' views, and the views of contractors, I should say, or in the public. And so, we need to explore that as well. And the conducting and managing of the solicitation, evaluation, selection process. Again, we've heard some of that. We haven't heard a lot of detail yet about selection and vetting of evaluators. And then there's the post-selection process number 5, which is where the required approvals. What do you do to challenge an award? And rolling through all 5 of these are conflict of interest and ethics issues and best practices models, which is that's part of the executive order. We've got to look at that and other issues. So my suggestion is that we add anything to this document we need. If there are anything on here that's not, if there's something else that should be on here that's not on here, let's plug it in the right process. I would like us, in terms of scheduling and moving forward, to try to keep this chronology in mind, and would like to try within the next several meetings and certainly before the end of May, to feel like we've gotten a good handle on what the county is doing, and then also where we want to focus, because I think that's what the interim report will talk about in May is, we'll describe what we've done, who we've heard from, what we are focusing on within the executive orders requirements, and who else we're going to be hearing from. So I've talked a lot more than I wanted to, but I wanted to try to provide some context to the rest of the commissioners. And any thoughts, any suggestions for additional topics under these 5? And again, I tried to be comprehensive, but if I've left something out, or people have other ideas, please say so.
Good morning, Phil. This is Carla Tucker. I just have, can you, if you don't mind, if you could scroll back up to the MBE portion so that I can make sure I incorporate what I need to incorporate in my presentation, please? Thank you.
Yes, and I think, Carla, I will jabber you the SharePoint link, because I believe you have access and it's on there.
Thank you.
Any comments, or have I stunned everyone into silence?
No, I mean, I think you've covered, the whole gamut. And if we could get through all of this, it would be great, because you have a better understanding. I mean, I think you covered most of the main issues that one needs to understand.
This is Carla. May I just chime in for a moment?
Of course.
Good morning. In reference to the MBE, we have goal setting. I'd like to just expand on that a little more. I know that Carla Tucker is going to present to us at some point, but to me, it's not just goal setting, it's the overall program. And I don't know if the disparity study will be complete by then, but for me, MBE, WBE, DBE is more than just goal setting, because goal setting means, and of course the certification is based on a subcontracting type of relationship. I'd like to see to talk about, because Scott has talked about it, Sheila, and I've been quiet because just not in my head, that sometimes the contracts, we could have contracts where a quote certified firm is a prime. So I just don't want to look at it from just a goal setting situation, as much as also taking into account if the disparity study is done and how are we looking to expand or the overall program, not just goals only, if that makes sense, for the procurement process. I don't want this to be that subset. I'm looking at it more from just a subset point of view in procurement. If that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's a great point. And this was really not meant to be limiting, but it's the sort of things that go into what the actual invitation for bids or the RFP says. But you're right, and I think we can certainly broaden that, because it should be broadened.
More like program as opposed to goal setting. If we could just rename it to say,
sure,
you know, the MBE WBE program.
Yes,
that kind of gives it a better overall picture.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Of course, no, it's a great point. Other thoughts?
Carly mentioned the disparity study, and I was just wondering, when is the result of the disparity study going to be available? Because really, that should be, you know, kind of part of this whole effort.
So I can answer that. Thanks for asking. It is nearing completion, and our goal is to have a presentation for you all in March, which would be the second week in March. We plan to have the county administrative, Carla, of course, and those on this call, but I've talked with Stacy Rogers. She will be part of that discussion, and we do think that the consultant that has been working on the study will be available as well. That's our timetable, and Carla, did I miss anything?
No, you didn't. That's correct.
March.
Very good. Thank you.
Great. One of the aspects of the executive order that we need to sort out how we're going to gather information about the trends in procurement and contracting. And I think best practices is also, I think that's as opposed to our best practices as a topic is very important here. And I've got a couple ideas about how we might look elsewhere, but I'm just wondering, in the experience of other commissioners or any of the county folks who are on the call, any suggestions about other local jurisdictions where procurement has been experienced in a good way?
So Phil, one of the things I was going to ask is, are we going to bring in any, this is not about any particular one jurisdiction, but are we looking to bring in any subject matter experts that have a national perspective, somebody from, you know, one of the associations to give us some perspective of what's happening across the country? Can we do that?
Yeah, well, I don't know if we can, but I mean, that's one of the things that frankly occurred to me as a way to gather information, not only as to trends, but also as to best practices. So Elizabeth, do we have that?
Yes, no, I think absolutely. I should have said that earlier in the last two meetings. We absolutely would be both. It would be most welcome, I think, for the team, Jasmine and myself and others on the call. We would really welcome your input as to who to invite. It would also help us generate some research. We have a fellow, someone we hope internally donated talent that can help with research, but kind of setting them on the right path again, through maybe presentations or contacts through your collective networks would be hugely helpful. Jasmine, do you have anything else, or Rose, on that?
Actually, I do want to interject and just state this, that Baltimore County is a member of a BRICPAC committee with Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and it is made up of other state agencies, local agencies, different counties. And we do meet monthly. We share information, best practice information. More important, specifically with dealing with this COVID pandemic, we have weekly meetings every Wednesday with this group to talk about, trends and lessons learned and things of that nature. So I just want to point that out, that we are actively engaged through this BRICPAC committee with other entities, so that we can stay abreast of, standard best practices.
Phil, may I add?
Yes, Peter.
Many professional organizations, and I'm sure the people in OIT are involved in them, have award programs where they reach out to their membership looking for best practices and leading edge innovation and creativity. And so that may be a resource to explore. And I'd even, as a commission member, be interested in links to any of their recent award descriptions, just to increase my own familiarity with what the state of play is in the business.
That's a great idea. Well, let's run that information down. Peter, did you have your hand up before? Yes, please.
Yes, I did. And so that's all great, just trying to find a best practice model or models. And the state highway, there's a lot of purchasing, Department of General Services, and I'm just wondering if anyone has reached out to them, to those organizations, to see kind of like what is their model. And they obviously purchase a lot more than Baltimore County does. They're responsible for purchasing for the entire state. But those are two large organizations that are, local, that may have some interesting information.
And I believe, and I have to double check if they are a part of, what I mentioned, the BRICPAC. I think what I'm going to do is I am going to send information to Jasmine, a link and a list of all of the different, entities, whether state, local, that is a part of that group. And also a link to their webpage, so that, you can see how we all kind of band together, kind of going back to what Rob had mentioned before, where we take a lead on a solicitation for a group effort. So I can share that with you. And I also wanted to mention that all of my buyers or purchasing folks are members of the MPPA as well. So we do encourage professional development to stay abreast of any best practice or procurement trends.
Thank you. That seems very important.
Great. Okay. Well, if to the extent anybody's got suggestions about subject matter experts, or Peter mentioned entities giving awards or the like, please share those with Jasmine, with me, or feel free to call me or email me. I will, on the state side, there's some folks I can check with there in this particular area. So let me do that, and let's try to pull that information together so that at our next meeting, we can have identified people and get them on the calendar, because I think that would be helpful. And I also, to Dan and Sheila's point about public comment and participation, we ought to, again, target a time to have that and offer it in particular. And it may be, again, one of these extra commission meetings. I think we have the authority to meet more than just once a month. And just concerned about what we need to accomplish. And I know this group is interested in having a meaningful interim report as well as a final report, and again, something that is actually useful. As I think someone mentioned in one of the last meetings, or maybe in a side conversation with me from this group, we want to have something that's not a final report that's not just going to be stuck on a shelf somewhere, but actually be something that will be helpful to the county. And I'm sure we can and will achieve that. We just have to keep ourselves focused on the best way to do that. In the time any other comments on any of that? Otherwise, in the time we have left, I wonder if we ought to take a look in particular at, in this procurement chronology, item numbers 2 and 3. I think we've got one pretty well covered, which is generally an overview between what we've heard so far from purchasing, what we've got next month with DPW, the Professional Services Selection Committee, unsolicited proposals. But I'm just in terms of further scheduling and who we hear from on the county side, let's look at the bullet points in number 2 first. Are there particular things there that again, mindful of the executive order, but are there particular topics there that people want to drill down on, or feel like we, based on their own experience in the procurement world, feel that this commission should analyze for purposes of the report, as opposed to other things that, again, may not be of particular concern at this juncture? Any thoughts about that, looking at item 2 in the bullet points there?
I think that on-call contracting is an issue, and the public-private partnership. For an example, our association had a meeting, virtual meeting with Julian Jones the other day, Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. And one of the issues that he brought up was about TradePoint, which I know the county had given TradePoint the TIF. And that's kind of like a private-public partnership. And I raised the issue with him about, having past experience with trying to get members of our association to get business with TradePoint, blah, 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 blah. So Julian was told by TradePoint he had to do a public information request to get information about the MBWB. And I was like, that wouldn't have happened if the state had not provided the TIF. So I'm not sure how the county handles public-private partnerships, but I think there's a lesson in certain mandates that private entities need to understand when they do TIFs and other private-public partnerships with the government. So I think that's another topic.
Okay, good.
I'd like to
add something.
Okay.
Sure. The items listed in number 2, Phil, are pretty much tracking the different types of procurement in the main.
Yes.
And I would be very interested just in terms of knowing where we should focus as to regards dollar volume, what the dollar volume of each of the categories of procurement looks like. So, is emergency purchasing, does that add up to more than on-call contracts? I don't think it would, but you get my idea.
Sure. Good. Okay. Other thoughts? Dan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, thank you. On the joint cooperative purchasing, 2, one, I'd like to specifically get a drill down on the purchasing of health insurance. It's a big ticket item. Lots of studies, state law, what is the county actually doing in terms of exploring piggybacking on the state health insurance plan, which I believe would give less cost and better coverage. And the second one on the fire department, now being an ER doctor here for many years, does this include volunteer fire companies, which do about half the EMS runs in Baltimore County? We have the paid and the volunteers, and the volunteers could, any breaks they can get. And maybe this is happening, I don't know. I actually asked my local department, volunteer company, I haven't really gotten a good answer yet. But even, purchasing of fuel or ladders or whatever, we ought to at least make that available to our volunteer companies if they want to piggyback when the fire department buys stuff, because they really perform a huge amount of service.
Sure.
Could I address that, Phil? Just a FYI, when it comes to the volunteer fire departments, we do, if they ask, for assistance for purchasing stuff, we do provide them our contractors' information. If they're looking to purchase something, we have a master agreement with it. We do share that master agreement information with them.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. Are they all aware of it? Do they take advantage of it? Or is this when somebody initiates?
Actually, to be quite honest, we don't know if we don't track if they're actually taking advantage of it, but we do provide them with that information.
Well, there is a Baltimore County Volunteer Fire Company Association, and maybe at the end of this, we'll reach out. Should just send them a letter and say, reminder, you can buy some good stuff through the county and get it maybe at a better price. Thanks.
Good. That's helpful. Other thoughts on item number 2 and any particular issues that we want further information on or we'd like to hear from somebody about beyond what we've heard so far or what we have scheduled?
So Phil, I'm just going to say amen to Sheila. And she was very kind. I think that's a big issue.
Got it.
My quick question is in reference to the joint cooperatives and the piggybacks. Are we taking in consideration the MBE goals on those types of contracts?
Carla, the answer to
that. What supersedes theirs or ours?
If it's a true piggyback contract, we have to take the terms and conditions of that contract. So if they have MBE WBE participation in it, we take their MBE WBE participation on the county side.
If it doesn't, I can't remember the young lady's name. She said, we'll try to make ours better. So if there isn't any MBE WBE participation, are we able to add it?
That might be something for law, because I was actually told that if we're piggybacking a contract, I can't change the terms of another jurisdiction's contract. So I've never tried to change the terms.
Okay.
And that's a really interesting legal issue, because I had that come up in the state context, not with respect to an MBE goal, but having to do with the state of Maryland's agency getting a better price than the out-of-state county agency, and actually it was an IT contract, and also getting better, some better hardware than the county contract had. It was all done within the scope and within the terms, but there were some tweaks to it. But the MBE issue had not come up, and it worked for my client. The Board of Public Works approved it, but it's an interesting legal issue you raised. So we should get some more information on that, and that fits very neatly into our charge under the executive order.
I would appreciate that, because while we understand the benefits of piggybacks, is definitely to save money because of the volume, but that in itself knocks out the MBE WBE participation.
Now that's
it's not there.
Sure. No, that's a great point. We will note that to drill down on that.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Anything else on 2 before we move to number 3?
One more thing on number 2. So
yes.
I did like the idea of getting some kind of dollar value for each one of these procurement vehicles and methods.
Yes.
In addition to that, is it possible to see what the dollar value has been over time, like the past 3 years, in relationship to each other? In other words, has one type of procurement vehicle been more popular over the past 2 or 3 years than others? So is it possible to also see that over like a 3-year period?
Well, I'll say a request for information. Of course, it must be possible. I don't know what the logistics are of doing that, but we'll look at that. If I had to guess, I bet emergency's been used a lot more in the last year than it had been before. But yeah, we'll put that on that list of things to ask for, Peter. It's a great suggestion.
And just to answer that, yes, we can pull that, Phil and Peter, so we can gather that.
Great. Terrific. Thank you. Let's go, again, mindful of time. We have about 15 minutes left. Let's look at item 3, which is the input into and drafting of solicitation documents. So at this point in the process, some service or product has been identified as a legitimate need for the county. The procuring agency has determined what kind of procurement vehicle will be used. And assuming we're not piggybacking or doing some sort of joint or intercooperative purchasing with another jurisdiction where we're limited as to terms and conditions, now we have to think about what's the solicitation document going to look like. What do we get input? And again, some of this, the unsolicited proposals, will be interesting to hear about that next month. But so, what kind of contracts are going to be? Is it going to be fixed price, cost reimbursement? What's the scope of work going to be? We've talked about the MBE, WB, DBE aspect, which we obviously will focus on. Are there any particular bullet points in here that commissioners are interested in drilling down on? More so than others?
Phil, I'm not sure where it fits in terms of these bullet points, but I have observed on a number of contracts that come to the county council for approval that was the prompt to my earlier question last meeting about how much time agencies are given when a contract is about to expire. Because I've seen many times coming to the council requests for approval for a replacement contract that has already expired. And so that puts the agency then in a position of actually initiating a new contract before county council approval. So it makes it seem like the agency hasn't had enough time to prepare a new contract and do the solicitation or whatever. Rose said it was 9 months advance notice that they give the agencies based on their files. So how is 9 months not enough for an agency?
Yeah, and to add to that, the agencies know how to access our master agreement list, and we have like the expiration column, so they can always, look on the list and see for themselves when a contract is approaching the expiration date.
But I think what you're maybe asking about, Peter, could be a little broader than the master contracts. It could be any contract, and then the notion is how long will it take to get through steps 1 and 2 and 3 and actually get some solicitation document out on the street with enough time for contractors to respond and enough time for the county to evaluate proposals and hold oral presentations if need be and do what else it needs to be. And so, there are always things you can't anticipate that can impede procurement process, but allowing enough time is a significant issue. Yes, there was a question.
Yes, and I want to say when I was in the mayor's office under Mayor Sheila Dixon and worked with the MBE community and procurement, that was a big problem because procurement would always say that they didn't have enough time. That's why we should extend the existing contract, when we couldn't understand where's your tickler file that will pop up and say whatever the time frame it takes to redo another contract to put it out on the street. Why is that tickler file not being utilized? So while Rosetta, I believe that's her name, said that procurement should have made, though there's an expiration date, but is there a quote in procurement, a tickler system that automatically pops up to say, now's the time to start working on this new solicitation? And so that you don't have the excuse of we ran out of time and that's why we have to do it over again. I also, go ahead, Carla. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Carl.
Just one note to Carla's comment. We do
Mm-hmm.
maintain a listing on the purchasing division's webpage of the contract forecasts, that listing that she's referring to. So that's available publicly at all times on the county website. That shows the master agreements, what the contract was, who the current contract holder is, and the expiration of the current term, as well as the expiration of the final contract term. That's available on the county website now.
Okay, so does procurement have their tickler file something on it? I see Rob shaking his head, so that you can eliminate the excuses of we're short on time.
Go ahead, Rob. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, Rose, why don't you go first, and then I want to kind of just follow.
I was just trying to be cautious of the time and just let Carla know that we can, I can definitely answer that question more in depth when we get to that point, just to be, if that's okay with you, just to be cautious. Yeah. Yes. But I can address that. Yes.
And my real quick input coming from an agency director is we actually have reports that run against our financial system and alert on every single contract, not only for expiration of time, but also for spending cap limits as well, because those are two things that you may see come up to council. What happens though in my agency, I can say, and other directors may attest to the same thing. Remember before we talked about the difficult negotiations because Baltimore County tries to have stringent rules put in place. Some of the contracts that we are looking at when we renegotiate may be 10 years old. And whether we are, maybe it's the only provider that does this, or so, the negotiations sometimes exceed that timeline that we would expect. And that's where I get back to that speed to market. And that's why we're trying to standardize our specs. And I think somebody had a great question on, do people come forward saying, we have this difficulty with the county negotiating terms? So it's not, I hate to put it this way, ignorance. Sometimes it's just the process gets in its own way. And it is making sure that the county is protected.
And we get it. There are always exceptions, but it shouldn't be the rule. And I've been where it's been the rule, and it's like, come on, we can do better. Absolutely. So thank you for that. There was something else. I know that it can be a legal issue, but since we're in that whole small local business consideration and MBE. Scott made a question kind of about what's the preference, and I know that can be tricky, but just to address it, whether we quote will do preference or not, it needs to be written in stone so that when vendors are asking Carla or your external stakeholders, what about preference, that we have something written out that says, you can't do preferences here, you can there, like maybe we can do something local, especially maybe on the smaller ones, but we just need to be, concrete about how we manage preferences on contracts.
It's a great point. Great point. Okay. Anything else on 3 to drill down? This has been very helpful to get these comments because it will help with scheduling going forward. And but any other thoughts on 3? Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The item of green and environmentally preferable purchasing, it's a huge issue. I'm not sure whether we may or may not have enough time to get into that. I just make a note that it's a big issue, and I know there's a lot of work and discussion going on the sustainability side about it, but it's just a big issue. So it maybe mentioning it in the context of something in the final report might be good, but I'm not sure you and we are going to have time to dig into that deeply. Just to make a comment.
No, I hear you. That's a great point. It would be interesting to know what the county is doing or thinking about how in terms of putting its contracts together, what it might is either requiring or would like to require or is thinking about requiring from contractors. I think we could get some presentation on that doesn't have to be hugely long, but we can see if there's enough interest for a deep dive, or if, again, as you're suggesting, Steve, that we just that we make a note of it and a recommendation to look at it more.
It's my understanding that Steve Lafferty, who's the head of the Office of Sustainability, was going to give us a perspective on that. So I would hope that we will have that done, and because that's his job, and we should hear from him.
Yep.
Yeah, that is. So we had been planning to have him and a member of his team present. They actually have a presentation that they share with other jurisdictions. So I'm eager for this group to see that. In the meantime, Steve has now been appointed to be the director of our Department of Planning. So we have a vacancy in sustainability, but I think it's all around a win-win because he will bring that lens, his work, and is still right now doing both jobs. So I do hope we can schedule that soon.
Good.
The other comment, Mr.
Steve, this is Carla. I want to email you about something after the meeting, so just kind of look out for one, please.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, also, do you envision this document as being sort of an outline for what might be the beginning of what goes in the report? Do you envision that?
Yes, part of it will be a status report. Well, listen, my vision might be limited. I want everybody's vision, but I'm thinking, just as the time is going on here, that it will be, here's what we've done, here's what we're going to look at, and yeah, it will be an outline of the final report. And I don't know that we'll be able to speak definitively about everything we'll cover in the final report, obviously, but yes, will be an outline.
Agree. Thank you.
And suggestions are welcome. I think that Elizabeth has shared a predecessor report, not on procurement, but when you read that, you'll see we have the bar has been set pretty high. So
well, we have 2 minutes remaining, but I learned a lot from that process. I know Ed Blades and I worked closely on that. I think the difference with that commission was we really were trying to make recommendations in time for the budget process. So it was sort of front loaded in the interim report, but you'll see that there's some specific recommendations. There are also issues for future consideration, things that won't fully get fleshed out by a process, even a year-long process. So I think there's some aspects of that. I said to Phil, it's not a law review article, it's not a treatise, it's actionable items, and that's the goal. We have a great graphic designer with the county. We rely on her heavily, and what makes it, I think, readable is partly her work at the end. So Lauren's going to be with us to help with the final product.
We'll have lots of graphics and pictures and see what we can do on the text. And you don't mention my name and law review in the same sentence. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up while we're all gathered here? It's we have a minute left. And if not, thank you. It's a pleasure to serve with all of you, and thank you, Elizabeth and Jasmine, and all the people from the county who are here and are supporting us. Rob, thanks again to you and your team for the presentation. We will meet on our February date. Whatever information we have that is gathered, we'll share. In the meantime, I'll work with Elizabeth and Jasmine based on our conversation about what else we want to particularly focus on, and any information anyone has about subject matter experts or organizations that make awards for best practices, please share those with Jasmine, me, Elizabeth, in any combination. And with that, I will say thank you, and we're adjourned.
Happy holiday, especially for those who are off on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much.
Take care, everybody.
Go Ravens. How about a go
Ravens?
Ravens?